Good evening. I see you're here, Pat. Welcome, everyone. This evening, we're having the May meeting for the Native Plant Society. We start a meeting with an acknowledgement. This land where we live was historically Tutelo-Monacan. However, ancestors ourselves arrived here in the New River Valley. We were learning a new way of managing the land for biodiversity, which connects us all to who lived on this land and will live on this land. This gift of native habitats that were managed so well for tens of thousands of years by the Tutelo-Monacan people and their ancestors now needs all of us working together to preserve it for future generations. So this evening we have, we're going to hear a talk by Brenda Graff on the vernal pools. And I'm kind of excited about it because I was reading a little bit about this and everybody talks about salamanders. I assume we're not going to talk just about salamanders tonight. These are seasonal bodies of water that are host to a variety of interesting plants and animals that have adapted to this environment that is becoming more and more rare nationwide. An estimated 90% of vernal pools are now gone. They're small in size and often overlooked, but important in preserving many rare and endangered species. So I'm going to introduce Brenda. She's been a member of the Native Plant Society for 12 years, master naturalist for 14 years, has been a past president of our society, and is now serving on the board. Welcome, Brenda. Okay. We're going to screen share.
Yeah.
She probably doesn't. I think they should change it so that she can share
Try
screen.
sharing the entire screen instead of just that application. Go up.
Oh, the entire screen. Yep.
There you go. So when she does presentation, it'll show that here.
Yep. And then we will get up here. And if we do that, then you can introduce that when you need to.
Okay, I've got 3 different YouTube videos that will be running. First one will be about 22 minutes, the second one about 10 minutes, and the last one about 18 minutes. They're going to talk about different aspects of vernal pools. Bob gave you a brief summary of them, and these will give you more details. It'll show you define what vernal pools are and what animals are living in them, why they are important to know about them and keep them going in that. So I'll start the first video now.
In a forest or wetland area, you've probably come across something like this. It's a random temporary pool of water that forms from melting snow or winter rain, and that doesn't stick around for very long. If I came back to this spot in midsummer, this will have easily dried up. I've walked past pools like this surely dozens of times in my life, and have given them essentially zero thought. But as it turns out, there is an entire hidden world in this pool, or hidden to me, at least. This is a vernal pool, and it is way more than just a temporary puddle. It's full of creatures that exist almost nowhere else, and it plays a big role in sustaining the forest around it. And after learning about these things from 3 experts, I cannot stop hyping them up. So it's story time. I first learned about vernal pools from a video posted by the Washtenaw County Parks and Rec Department in Southeast Michigan. They posted a video of a creature I had never heard of before called a fairy shrimp. And the caption taught me that apparently fairy shrimp live in something called vernal pools, which I had also never heard of, or at minimum, never retained. Still, my curiosity was thoroughly piqued, and I immediately wanted to learn more about vernal pools in the Upper Peninsula, where I live. Mostly, I couldn't believe I'd been walking past what seemed to be entire ecosystems for years without noticing. And I wanted to learn more about not just what lives in vernal pools, but also why the pools are important. Pretty quickly, I realized that the most effective way to answer these questions wasn't going to be through Google. It felt important to me to actually visit one of these places and experience it in person. And when it came to learning about vernal pools, I was also really hoping to learn from an expert who could help me understand them. And to that end, I ended up getting connected with not 1, but three lovely humans from Michigan Technological University in the Western Upper Peninsula. Sam Kurkowski, who just finished her master's degree in applied ecology and did her thesis on vernal pools in the Great Lakes region. Dr. Rod Chindner, an ecology professor who studies the wonderful world of wetlands. And Zoe Schaefer, an ecology student and field tech who's also getting started on some vernal pools research of her own. These three generously agreed to take me out to visit some vernal pools. And one of my first questions for them as we got started was the obvious one. What exactly are vernal pools? What makes a vernal pool different from like your garden variety pond or, you know, a puddle?
So this is a small pool in the forest, but is it a vernal pool? Does it meet the criteria of a vernal pool?
What are the criteria of a vernal pool?
So some of the most important ones are that they're isolated and fishless, are kind of the first criteria. The fishless part is really important because it lets other wildlife that can't survive with other predators thrive in vernal pools. That's kind of the different from a pond or a larger body of water.
And usually they have some indicator species of animals that live in them, like fairy shrimp, certain amphibians and frogs and fingernail clams. So pond in your driveway may hold water, but it won't be a vernal pool because it won't have any of those indicator species. And this probably doesn't have any indicator species in it either.
This one probably dries out too quickly to have indicators, so it's more like weeks or months of having water, maybe 6 weeks or something in the spring instead of like days.
Okay, so this is just a puddle.
Yeah, we would call this a pool.
Okay.
More than
In
likely,
wetlands.
yeah, it can be hard to tell.
So do vernal pools form in any like climate that has snow that melts, or are there other criteria?
There are probably vernal pools everywhere that you can have a small depression in the landscape with enough water to fill it. So there are vernal pools in California that look really different than the ones that are here. So there's like kind of a separate body of work about them. They're probably all over the world realistically, but they might not be the same in as what we consider a vernal pool.
Okay, gotcha.
And our vernal pools are snowmelt fed, but in a lot of regions is just winter rain can fill up
Oh, yeah,
for winter precipitation.
sounds so silly. I'm like, oh yeah, it can rain in the winter.
Not every place gets 10 feet of snow.
When it comes to finding vernal pools, that can be done by people on the ground, but the world is a big place, and these pools don't stick around for terribly long, just a few weeks or so, like Sam said. So researchers also rely on equipment that can help them find vernal pools remotely. And while I was chatting with Zoe about that video I saw that kicked off my curiosity about this whole thing, Rod mentioned something that reminded me that the world is an eerily small place sometimes, because as it turns out, their remote sensing data comes from Ann Arbor, near where that fairy shrimp video was taken.
So our partners on this project are from Ann Arbor, they're Michigan Tech Research Institute. So they do all the remote sensing and they find these little pools remotely.
They use like a combination of techniques, so LiDAR, which is like, they can scan it like from a plane or satellites. You can see the topography and also the canopy and stuff. So LiDAR, radar, and aerial imagery, like some combination of those.
So they find little tiny depressions in the ground with LiDAR, then they can see if it has water in it with
Mhm.
radar.
Oh. And compare spring and summer, so they can see which ones don't have or have water in spring
Right.
but not in the summer.
And then they can try to find to see if there's streams coming into it. Because vernal pools are supposed to be isolated,
Mhm.
no hydrologic connection to anything else.
Are we gonna hop this one?
No, this is the one.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember.
Here, go find some fairy shrimp.
Great, welcome to a vernal pool. To recap, vernal pools are temporary pools that form in the spring and stick around for roughly a few weeks to a couple months, depending on the conditions. They're isolated and aren't fed by streams, and they don't contain fish. Instead, they usually contain at least one indicator species that, you know, you've probably found a vernal pool. And this was my first introduction to one of those creatures. Animals living in my backyard and probably yours, I have never known about.
So these are fairy shrimp.
Okay.
This is one of the. There we go. So these are one of the 5 indicator species that we use for this region. And that means that these organisms rely on vernal pools almost exclusively, so you can't find them in more permanent water bodies. Because they don't compete well enough, the predators just eat them up.
Question, how did they get into a vernal pool?
Yeah, the way they survive in a vernal pool, which is part of it, is they lay their eggs and their eggs can completely dry up or like desiccate.
Oh, cool.
And then when the water fills up again, they can like rehydrate basically and just hatch and keep on going. And then they reproduce and lay eggs and then they dry out. They are transported indirectly. Obviously, they can't move themselves. So birds sometimes, like the eggs move on birds or other amphibians like salamanders go between different pools.
So I know they're called fairy shrimp. Are there any relation to what I'll call action shrimp?
No.
Okay, I didn't imagine so.
These, you ever heard of sea monkeys? These are sea monkeys.
Wait, actually?
That's what they sold, because these things, the eggs dry up, you can put them in a package. There's a different species of these.
Okay.
Larger, but it's fairy shrimp.
So you've got fairy shrimp. What other plants or animals are you likely to find in a pond here?
In a vernal pool, we get a lot of wood frogs and a couple species of salamanders.
Other species use vernal pools. I've heard spring peepers at some before. Birds and mammals have been documented using them, but they don't use them quite as like exclusively as indicator species would. So
And when you say using them, like what for?
probably water and like food.
A lot of birds will come and eat the frogs.
Yeah.
Salamanders are tadpoles.
Eating the eggs. There aren't any vegetation like obligate species.
Okay.
At least here, there are in other places in their vernal pools, but here you'll just find like more common of species that can also occur other places.
So with something that is so temporary, I guess. I can't think of any other way to ask this question other than like, so why do vernal pools matter? Like, you all clearly spent a ton of time studying them. Why?
Yeah,
On a forest, there can be any one vernal pool, maybe it's not that important, but when there's thousands of them. They store a lot of water on the landscape, and then that slowly gets released into the groundwater and into the streams and rivers. They produce a lot of our amphibian species, and those amphibians they've been found to move nutrients out of these vernal pools. These are little hot spots of nutrients. And they'll move them into the forest as the frogs or amphibians hatch in here and eat all the nutrients in the pool. They'll go out in the forest and then eventually they'll die or be eaten, and all those nutrients are then transferred into the forest. And there's been a lot of some really neat studies that have shown us a significant amount of nitrogen and phosphorus is moved into the upland forest
Wow,
from these little pools.
cool. And not an ecologist here.
Yeah.
What roles do like nitrogen and phosphorus play in a forest in this kind of ecosystem?
They're the primary limiting nutrients for plant growth.
Okay.
So that's what the trees are limited by in their plants, is all nitrogen and phosphorus.
Huh.
So you're just fertilizing, they're basically fertilizing the forest. Yeah, I mean, also from the water standpoint, we're right next to a river and we just had flooding from snow melt. But it would have been a much worse flooding, a lot worse, if we didn't have wetlands and vernal pools capturing a lot of this water, storing it here instead of just running right into the river.
Okay.
So they're really important for hydrologic in a watershed condition.
Going back to it being good frog and salamander habitat, the fact that it's fishless is huge because there's a lot of aquatic habitat that they need to lay their eggs, but this is one of the few where it's going to be fishless, and so the offspring is safe.
Okay, so in your normal like neighborhood pond, there would be fish just eating everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's probably not frogs, or there could be, but they're not gonna do well.
And some amphibians do well with fish, and they grow in wetlands and lakes and bigger bodies of water, and these ones do not. They can't tolerate fish.
To add to that, and really to paraphrase something that Sam and Ron said a bit later, vernal pools are also huge for biodiversity. Just having different kinds of habitat in a forest allows for different kinds of organisms to live there. To give one specific example, Ron mentioned that yellow birch trees have been found to be more abundant near vernal pools, which is cool because yellow birches aren't as common as they used to be. Overall, biodiversity is really beneficial because having more kinds of organisms means a forest is more resilient to things like pests and climate change. It's more likely that at least some of those species will be able to survive whatever comes their way. Also, vernal pools in particular have two distinct seasons. In the early spring, they provide aquatic habitats, And in the summer, when they dry out, they provide a different sort of habitat for a wide range of plants. So in summary, they do so much more than I would have ever guessed. And this is not the last time that theme will come up. After this, we headed over to a second vernal pool, and I got to chat with Zoe about what it looks like to be a field tech. More on that in a second. But for now, what I really enjoyed about the second vernal pool, especially now that I understood why there's such a big deal, is just how different it was. I didn't realize how much diversity there could be even among pools, maybe a few 100 feet apart.
What's interesting about these two pools that we've come to is that one over there dries out really quickly. It's water in it for a month or less, but it's not long enough for frog species or amphibians, so there's no eggs, but there's a lot of fairy shrimp. Where this one stays wet longer, there's no fairy shrimp, but there's thousands of frogs here. And it's so loud that when you're sitting up on that hill, when it's probably another week from now, it actually hurts your ears. It's just so loud.
What?
Yeah, it's deafening. Did you find some?
Got some fingernail clams.
Yay.
I've never heard of the fingernail clam.
So these are like little tiny clams, they're called fingernail clams. So they're another indicator of vernal pools. So we have two indicators in this spot, fingernail clams and wood frogs. That are vernal pool indicators. So indicator species of vernal pools means that they indicate that there's likely to be a vernal pool. So we use five indicator species, 2 salamanders, a frog, fingernail clam, and fairy shrimp. But that doesn't mean that that's all that's in those pools. They just indicate that they're vernal pools. There's a lot of species and life in vernal pools.
So I know we covered this with fairy shrimp already, that fairy shrimp are only found in vernal pools?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, does that also apply to the 4 other indicator species?
They're like probably like 95% all like only in vernal pools. So I mean, nothing is like perfect in ecology, but mostly that if you see them, you can know that that place dries up.
Oh, that's a wood frog. The chuckling duck. And that's an indicator. Yeah, sure, I'm gonna go one more salamander.
Yeah, I don't know, I haven't seen, but I mean, I just like went through the middle, we could do the edges more.
Spoiler, we did not find any eggs. It was too early in the season. But I did get to learn about the research Sam just finished for her master's thesis, which I found super interesting. It was another moment of realizing that there is always more to vernal pools than meets the eye, which I found inspiring.
We wanted to get a better idea of what vernal pools look like here, because there's a lot of information about vernal pools in other places, but there's just less here, so. We learned that they're similar to pools in the Northeast. Obviously, we both have the hardwoods and similar soils. We also found that indicator species were more common in deciduous pools instead of conifer pools, probably because they get more light in the spring. Also, that their leaf litter is more like nutritious, essentially.
Ooh.
Yeah, they have more available nutrients than like conifer needles that have other compounds that make them harder to break down. Yeah, and since that's kind of one of the food sources of larvae and frogs and salamanders, having more nutrients available might be better.
Okay, so this would be.
This would be a deciduous pool. There are all deciduous trees over it.
I would have never thought about that. Like how.
We didn't either.
Yeah.
We just knew that when we went to vernal pools, some of them had a lot of indicators and some didn't, even though they looked really maybe similar, so we wanted to know why they were different. There's a lot more to learn, for sure.
Nice. See what I mean? There's just so much to consider. And it just kept going from there as I chatted with Zoe about what she's done as a field tech and some of her research.
Basically, whatever Sam is interested in sampling or whoever your crew lead is interested in sampling, you help with all of that. So for vernal pools, that meant backpacking across Isle Royale with these guys and taking pH, measuring the length and width of the pool, whatever they needed. So you get to do a wide variety of things and it's a really good experience.
So Zoe, you were talking about studying connectivity. To me, so the vernal pools are isolated and you connect 2 vernal pools together. It just sounds like you just made a big vernal pool.
Oh, okay. I should clarify. So what I meant by connectivity was, if you're looking at a series of vernal pools, I meant connected, like, in a sense that they're close together distance wise,
Okay, got it.
not like the water is connected.
So like, are they close enough that the animals in each one can get between pools? And then are there like barriers? Maybe a road or a cliff or like a clear cut or something would be a barrier that would make them not connected, even
Got
if they're close.
So we'll be looking into that pictured rocks this spring and like going into the summer. which is obviously an unmanaged system, but that can be really useful in a managed system where there's logging to say, okay, obviously habitat fragmentation is a huge issue, but if you're gonna cut off this pool, what effect could that have?
Oh, neat, okay. So you could be, I guess, just like applications of research. You could be like, hi, Forest Center, who's managing that forest, you can log this section, but like, if you log this section, you're gonna disrupt this whole vernal pool system.
It depends like who the stakeholders are and what their goals are, but if you wanted to make conservation like part of it, then you'd be like, oh, this is something I need to think about.
So I guess thinking about that, whenever I, think about ecology stuff like this, climate change.
Yeah.
Question mark, how will that affect vernal pools? Or is
It
it?
all depends on the precipitation. If we get wetter winters, it probably won't affect them much because they form from snow or rain in the winter and they don't have to stay wet very long. But if we get drier winters and really dry springs, have a huge impact. So
Yeah.
for instance, in 2010, we did a study in Pictured Rocks and vernal pools, and that was the hottest, driest spring I think we've ever had. 90% of the vernal pools we visited were dried out they were desiccating salamander and frog egg masses.
Oh
So
my
that
gosh,
was just very not ideal situation for vernal pools. So if those conditions happen more and more, our amphibian population would be in trouble. But if it's like this year, where we got a lot of precip, which
Yeah.
is also being predicted for climate change, then the vernal pools amphibians will fare much better.
okay,
So
What is a vernal pool really changes on a year-to-year basis based on how much water you have. So maybe something that's almost a pond in the wet years, it clearly doesn't dry. In those dry years, that's really important, like vernal pool essentially. So protecting like a wide range of vernal pool characteristics is important to kind of account for all of that. Cause even without climate change, there's just a lot of variation from year to year,
yeah, that makes sense,
so.
then that variation is gonna get greater and greater.
okay,
We've already seen that.
yeah,
Like small and maybe nondescript doesn't mean it's not important.
yeah,
So there might be stuff you can't see, like tiny fairy shrimp or ecosystem services is a word people use, so like protecting water availability in the forest and improving that and other stuff like that. You might not think that this little like pool of water does that, but it is doing that, so.
yeah, I feel like that's something I keep realizing over the course of this conversation, is like, I'm sure I've walked past vernal pools
Oh, yeah,
a million times,
Mhm.
and I've always just gone, oh yeah, snow's melting.
yeah, you wanna look closely, it's
Yeah.
hard to see, so.
One thing I want people to realize is that even though vernal pools are small and they dry up, there actually are really important ecosystems and they're worthy of protection.
I'm restraining laughter, because Sam said.
That's what I said,
It's like,
No,
it
it's-
is.
and, yeah, people don't
Even
think about it.
scientists, everyone, you don't really think about things because they're small and they're common or they're just puddles of water, but they're not. They're actually an important ecosystem.
I feel like from the wildlife standpoint, they're often overlooked because they're such important habitat for frogs, but they're not necessarily a very charismatic taxa. It's not like a larger mammal where you would think of protecting like all this terrestrial habitat. With a frog, a lot of people, it's just a frog, like it's slimy and gross, but not to me. I love frogs.
The difficult part is large wetlands are protected by the Clean Water Act
Oh,
in Michigan.
Okay,
But vernal pools are too small, they're not protected by any federal laws.
interesting,
Some states have regulations on vernal pools, but not all of them, and they change from state to state, so it can be really difficult.
And like Forest Service can protect them or Park Service, but they're not mandated to. We should go.
Yeah.
Just a little wetland.
So much from this conversation with Sam, Zoe, and Rod. I'm really grateful for not only their expertise, but their willingness to share it. I don't think it would have sunk in just how important vernal pools are or how much they do if I had just read a few web pages or even a book or two. So if you have the opportunity, I highly recommend visiting a vernal pool this spring or next spring if your corner of the world has already dried out. If you do, please tread lightly, be very mindful of where you step, and leave no trace you were there. Same goes for any kids or pets you might be bringing with you. And if you'd like to learn more about studying vernal pools as a citizen scientist, which sounds super fun, you can check out the Michigan Vernal Pools Partnership, link in the description. Overall, I am just in awe at how many incredible things exist in the world around us in the most seemingly ordinary places. And I know I will never look at a random pool in the forest the same way again. Like most of my videos right now, this one isn't sponsored. So I wanted to say a special thank you to the folks who support.
No. It's covered.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, later late.
Hello, I'm Jillian Whitney, wildlife biologist for DCR's Division of Water Supply Protection. And if you're out walking in the woods and you come across this, a shallow depression, you very likely found a vernal pool. The word vernal means related to or occurring in spring, and that's when it all happens, right here. Most vernal pools form in low-lying areas or depressions, have no permanent outlet, and are usually fed only by snowmelt and rain runoff. So, kind of like a puddle. And unlike a pond or lake, most vernal pools dry up by mid-spring to summer. But some pools can go for a couple of years before they dry up. It's this temporary nature of the pool that makes it unique. Fish and other pond life must live in water year-round and cannot survive in a vernal pool. But amphibian eggs, like those of frogs or salamanders, only need water for a few months of the year to grow to adulthood. And here they are safe from being eaten by fish. There are of course other threats to eggs and tadpoles in vernal pools. Late season freezing or snow could harm egg masses, and terrestrial snakes, birds, or mammals could eat eggs and tadpoles as well. But for the most part, in this environment, a high percentage of the eggs laid here have a good chance of surviving. Species such as wood frogs and spotted salamanders lay their eggs here in the early spring, after which the adults return to the nearby woodlands. When the eggs hatch, the larva or tadpole live in the pool until they grow into their adult forms. This transformation is called metamorphosis. Adult spotted salamanders then spend much of their lives underground, and wood frogs spend much of their lives on land, but only return to the pools in the spring to breed. Fairy shrimp, on the other hand, spend their entire lives in a vernal pool, and when the pool dries up, their eggs will survive until the pool fills with water again. These three species are known as obligate vernal pool species. They require a vernal pool to survive, and the vernal pool is identified by their presence. So if you hear wood frogs calling, find spotted salamander, wood frog egg masses, or find fairy shrimp, then you have found a vernal pool. Vernal pools come in a variety of shapes and sizes. They can range from a small puddle to several thousand square feet. They are most often found in forested areas where there is a partial to complete shade over the pool. Pools with a partially open canopy usually melt and dry out faster in the spring than those with a closed canopy. Water clarity and depth can vary as well, with most pools averaging 2 to 4 feet in depth, but some may be as deep as 10 feet. Pools can be relatively free of vegetation, with only leaf litter in the bottom and trees around the edges. Or there could be lots of vegetation, such as blueberry or winterberry, different grasses, or sphagnum moss in the pool. Dead and decaying trees and branches may also be present, which can be a great opportunity for attachment points of egg masses. All of these factors can have an effect on the way life progresses in the pool. This is a very unique place with a delicate balance, where very specific but ecologically important animals thrive. But it's not all easy peasy for them. Life in a vernal pool is a race against time, to grow to maturity and then hop, slither, or crawl to the uplands before the pool dries out. Then, in the fall, when most pools are dry, falling tree leaves will litter the bottom of the pool, and the next spring, when it fills with water again, these leaves are broken down by microscopic organisms to become a food source, as well as protection for the newly hatched tadpoles and fairy shrimp. Then, when the time is right, The adult creatures instinctively return to the pool to lay their eggs. What a sequence. Everything in nature has its place. For these reasons, the DWSP, as well as many other environmental organizations, take special care in preserving and protecting vernal pools. Some state-listed rare species, such as blue spotted, Jefferson, and marbled salamanders, are associated with or entirely dependent on the unique habitat vernal pools provide. DWSP makes efforts to locate and identify vernal pools during the spring, and the agency maintains accurate and detailed records of those pools. Vernal pools are an important part of the watershed management forest. Not only is the pool itself important, the land immediately surrounding the pool is critical too. These areas are an important forest floor environment, shaded with abundant leaf litter and coarse woody debris cover, for amphibian dispersal, foraging, and hibernation during the time animals are not in the pool. Because this habitat extends beyond the pool itself, the Division of Water Supply Protections treats all potential vernal pools, whether certified or not, to be vernal pool habitat areas and affords them all of the same protections. Vernal pools are found all over Massachusetts and beyond. They are small habitats that make a big difference for some ecologically important critters. Vernal pools are temporary in nature, yet support critical breeding sites for several rare and endangered species. For you, that means please be respectful of what may be a vernal pool, and it's best to leave it alone. For us, here at DWSP, this is just one of the important habitats that are being protected, restored, or maintained by the Division of Water Supply Protection in the land surrounding the Quabbin Reservoir, the Ware River Watershed, and the Wachusett Reservoir, which are the source of drinking water to 3.1 million people. Thank you.
Oh,
What?
yeah.
That stopped. Okay, good. Gotta sneak up on this side.
In the middle. It's gonna start playing.
Oh,
This video is sponsored by
Hey everyone, welcome to 15 Minutes in the Forest. I'm Jennifer Gagnon with the Forest Landowner Education Program at Virginia Tech. And today I'm joining you from Crater Lake State Park in Southwest Virginia. I have a special guest with me today, Judy McCord, and she's going to be talking to us about vernal pools.
My name's Judy McCord. I'm a Virginia Master Naturalist with the New River Valley chapter of Master Naturalist. And one of the things that Master Naturalists do is citizen science projects. There's all these different groups and maybe researchers out there that are looking for people to help out with learning about things in the environment. And one of the projects that we can do in our chapter is vernal pool monitoring. We have 4 pools here at Crater Lake State Park that we monitor. And we come out every 2 or 3 weeks during the vernal pool season. And we measure the size of the pools. We look at what obligates, and I'll get to that later. We'll look at what obligates are in the pool. Put the time on there and let them know what's going on in these pools. The reason the vernal pools are important is because, well, one of the things is amphibians are, a lot of our obligates are amphibians. And amphibians are kind of the canary in the coal mine, if you will. Amphibians have permeable skin, moist permeable skin. So if there's pollution or something like that in the air or in the water, that can kill the amphibians. So we want to keep the amphibian populations healthy. What is a vernal pool? A vernal pool is a pool in a forest that is filled by water, usually from snow melt and or runoff rain in the spring. But the vernal pool is not connected to any other body of water. It may be in a floodplain, pools of water that are left when a river or a stream goes down after it's flooded. It may be a rut in a Forest Service road. It may be an intermittent stream that runs only in the spring or the winter when the water's high. And then when it drops down, it leaves disconnected pools of water out through the woods. But it's not connected to any other body of water. And the reason that's important is because one of the big predators in any body of water is fish. And the vernal pools mostly dry up by summer. So fish cannot survive in the vernal pools, so we have less predation. We have fewer predators in a vernal pool. And because of that, there are animals that breed only in the vernal pools. They're called vernal pool obligates. Most of them are amphibians. In Virginia, we have the Mavis salamander and the tiger salamander, both of which are endangered. We have the mole salamander, we have the marbled salamander, we have the Jefferson salamander, and we have kind of the poster child for vernal pools, the ones that you see large numbers of them going across the road, and people will actually go out and try to stop cars to keep them from running over the spotted salamanders. So we have all those here in the state of Virginia. They're all in different areas. We don't have all those here in the park, but we have some of them. There's also the wood frog, which is a vernal pool obligate, and there are some tiny, tiny little crustaceans called fairy shrimp that only breed in the vernal pools. Now, these animals don't live in the vernal pools all the time. They only breed in the vernal pools. They live in the forest surrounding the vernal pools. They may live in a 1 meter square plot of land their entire lives. They migrate to the pools to breed in the early spring, and then they go back to their little plot of land. So when we're thinking about trying to protect our vernal pools, we need to protect not only the pool itself, but about 400 feet all the way around the vernal pool. Some of the things that we can do to protect that area is these salamanders are what we call fossorial. They live underground. They live in little burrows, maybe up underneath dead woodfall. And you can see there's woodfall all around behind me, some little more than there had been. But they live up under that woodfall. So if you can leave dead trees where they are, the salamanders can live under there. Leave the leaf litter down. Don't rake and mow and that kind of thing in the area around the vernal pools, because these animals have to have their skin moist. They breathe through their skin is moist. And so it's kind of a microclimate underneath those leaves. So we need to leave the leaves down, leave the logs down, and also try to keep a cover of trees, a good canopy of trees over it to cool the area where they are. You put it out in the broad sunlight and they're going to dry up a whole lot faster. So that's some of the things that we could do to protect the vernal pools. Is protect the area surrounding them as well as the pool itself. The first salamander to come to the vernal pools is the marbled salamander. The marbled salamanders do everything kind of backwards. Most of the salamanders that use the pools come in the spring and they lay their eggs in the pools, and then they go back to the forest. The marbled salamander females come to the pools in late fall, and they lay their eggs under logs that are going to be covered up by the water in the spring. They will stay with those eggs all winter long, protecting them. And then when the pool gets filled in the spring, the young will hatch, and the mother marbleds will go back to the forest where they live. So the baby marbled salamanders are the first ones to hatch in the pools. Now the marbled salamanders, the smallest of our vernal pool salamanders, he only gets to about 4 inches. But because they are the first ones laying eggs in the pool, they're the first ones hatched. And so they can utilize the other salamanders when they're laying their eggs. They can eat the eggs nests of the other salamanders. They're bigger than all the other salamanders, so when those babies hatch, they can eat those, and they eat other stuff too. They eat, insect larvae and whatever they can find. But if that pool freezes over and gets too frozen, then there's a chance that they might not survive the winter. Cause they'll hatch October, November usually. This pool, they did not hatch until early spring this year, so they don't have quite the advantage this year that they normally would have, having hatched out in the fall. But hopefully they'll have enough to eat here and they'll be able to eat. So we've caught a baby marbled salamander here. You're not supposed to catch them. You have to have a scientific collections permit to catch them. But we have caught one so that you can look at it, and I'm covered under the permit here, so we can catch them for educational purposes and get a look at them. A baby salamander looks kind of like a tadpole, but I don't know if you can see it or not. They have feathery gills behind the head. Tadpoles do not have, they're basically head and tail. But the baby salamanders have feathery gills behind the head that they use. Once they become adult salamanders, they'll lose those gills and they will be adults, lungless. And also salamanders breathe through their skin. So they will become adults and crawl out of the water. This pool we call the duck pool, and it is not in the forest. My guess is this used to be a forested area, but when it was cleared it was logged and cleared. And the pool is just kind of here now that's out in a field. So a lot of times the animals that lay their eggs in here, this pool has Jefferson salamanders in it. And also the fairy shrimp, which are the little crustaceans that live in vernal pools or breed in vernal pools. And we'll get a little bit more on those later. But this pool now is actually out in the open, and it dries up very, very quickly this year, or every year. Fairy shrimp are little tiny crustaceans. Think sea monkeys if you had those when you were a kid. The fairy shrimp only live for 2 or 3 weeks. They breed in the pool. They lay their eggs could drop down into the muck of the pool, and they stay there until the pool has water in it again in certain conditions, I guess. But we've only found them in the pool one time in the 6 years, 7 years we've been monitoring this pool. But they're carried from pool to pool on, like, say, ducks that might fly from pool to pool, and they can get the eggs or the fairy shrimp on them and carry them from pool to pool. The salamanders, on the other hand, return to their natal pool. They return to the pool where they were hatched. So they're not carried from pool to pool, but the fairy shrimp are a little bit different, and they're tiny, tiny. I don't see any in the pool right now. Our shrimp, we think, are summer shrimp, and so they'll come a little bit later in the season. So this pool is also utilized by other wildlife. My guess is there's been deer tramping around in here. We've caught ducks. We've seen ducks in here. A few minutes ago, we saw a red-spotted newt, which is one of the major predators of our salamanders, the red-spotted newt. And they're everywhere in all wetlands. But this one will probably dry up before these salamanders can become adults, but we're always hopeful that they'll survive. That kind of little blob out there is one of the Jefferson salamander egg masses. Jefferson salamanders have their egg masses are about the size of golf balls. They're covered in a jelly-like consistency material, so you can't see the individual eggs because they're covered in this jelly-like material. But they lay golf ball size egg masses. Those egg masses, the egg masses are actually clear, but this pool has a lot of sediment in it. It's been raining here. The deer go out in it. So what looks like a kind of a blob is actually an egg mass, and I don't know what the fertility of that egg mass is now that it's all covered in sediment, but that's the Jefferson salamander egg masses. Spotted salamander egg masses in comparison are larger, they're more of a football size. And they will lay their eggs again. You see kind of rows of salamander eggs with the Jeffersons. The spotted salamanders will be more in clumps. There's 3 different colors of spotted out salamander egg masses. There's clear, and the clear ones sometimes get an algae in there, but it's a symbiotic relationship. The nutrients that the baby salamanders put out are taken up by the algae and utilized, and the algae creates oxygen, makes oxygen for those developing eggs. So they might be green, and some of the spotted salamanders are also cloudy. They're kind of opaque looking. And there doesn't seem to be any difference in viability between the different colors of the egg masses. But spotted salamanders' egg masses are somewhat larger than Jefferson salamander egg masses. One of the things we look for in the very early spring is what we call spermatophores. The males will come to the pools early on, and they'll lay down these they look like little grains of rice, little packets of rice. And they'll lay those down in hopes that when the female comes, she'll pick up those spermatophores and use them to fertilize her eggs. This pool we call the Bear Drive pool because it is on Bear Drive. It is about 10 feet from Bear Drive. Show you kind of the diversity of the pool. This pool, it's small. I think it's really pretty. We have wood frogs and Jefferson salamander egg masses in here, or have had them. I don't see any today, but they're here. They utilize this pool. We also have documented spring peepers in this pool and gray tree frogs in this pool. So the vernal pools are not only for the obligates, there's other animals that use these pools. But this just shows you a little bit about how the diversity of what the pools might look like. This one, again, it's about 10 feet from a road. We are standing kind of on top of a small hill, and why the water stays in this pool as long as it does, I do not know. But this is a vernal pool in Claytor Lake State Park. We call this one the entrance pool. This pool at its largest is probably an acre in size, maybe. I'm not really good with sizes, but this is a big pool. When it's at full capacity, which it is not at all today, that water is chest deep on me out of the middle. So it makes it really, really, really hard to monitor this pool because we're supposed to be finding egg masses, and all the egg masses are out in the middle. But this pool is big enough that it has painted sliders. It has we saw a snapping turtle in here. We have a green heron out here. We've seen great blue heron out here. We just started a couple of mallards. We've seen wood ducks. There's all kinds of animals. There's dragonflies and damselflies. We've seen cedar waxwings taking baths in the edges of this pool. This pool is just vibrantly alive. There are leeches in the pool. It is completely full of red spotted newts and bullfrogs and just all kinds of animals use this pool. We've seen deer drinking from this pool. So the vernal pools are important as for other wildlife besides the obligates. But again, this is a pool that is for the most part surrounded by forest. There's a lot of down trees around for obligate salamanders to live under. And it's a beautiful pool. We're going to try to catch a couple things just to look at in here. Okay, what we have here, I believe, is a wood frog egg mass. The wood frogs are communal breeders. They come together in the pool in large groups. You'll hear they've got kind of a call that sounds like a quack. So if you hear quacking coming in, say, January and February, the wood frogs can freeze solid and survive. So they are the first of the obligates that comes to the pool in the spring after, of course, the marbles. But their egg masses are laid in great big rafts of masses. This one, for some reason, is not with the mass, and I'm unsure whether it's spotted or wood frog, but I think it's wood frog. But you can see the baby developing embryos in there. The black little spots are developing embryos in that egg mass. They're going to hatch, and they've got little tadpoles or little golden flecked tadpoles. They have little gold spots on them. And they've got 2 to 3 months before that pool dries up and they've got to be out of there. Again, those tadpoles will not have, gills behind their head. Tadpoles are just a head and a tail, whereas the salamanders have the gills behind their heads. This is a close-up of your wood frog egg mass. The eggs are individual. You can tell them all apart. You can kind of tell them all apart. If it was a salamander egg mass, there'd be a gelatinous coating around it. So this is a wood frog egg mass. These are Jefferson salamander egg masses. I calculate about 3 egg masses in here. Again, they're about golf ball size. They don't lay anywhere near as many eggs as the spotted salamanders. The white ones are probably eggs that are not going to hatch. They're not viable. They either had a fungus or they're not fertilized or something. I'm not sure which, but the little black ones, if the newts don't eat them all, these guys are going to hatch into little tiny salamanders and hopefully survive to become adults and out of this pool. So those are Jefferson salamander eggs.
Well, thank you for spending 15 minutes in the forest with us. And thank you, Judy, for spending your afternoon with me to teach us about vernal pools. Be sure to join us again for another edition of 15 Minutes in the Forest in 2 weeks at 12:15. Have a great weekend.
I'm trying. Okay, now I want to stop share. Okay, so this is a brief overview of vernal pools. And the master naturalists have been doing this in Virginia since about 2010. And they're doing it as a citizen science program. Usually the scientists, there's not enough scientists to do all of the research. So that's why they get volunteers to do it. Some of the citizen science projects, you have to get trained and you get certified. With the vernal pool training, you do have to get classes in that. Our chapter will do that. And they were showing that they can use technology to look for the vernal pools using LiDAR and that, but you could do it the old-fashioned way. Another master naturalist and I, about 6-7 years ago, we went to one of the nature conservancy parks that's closed and that to the public. And what we did was we searched the floodplain along the creek there. One of us was like about maybe 30 foot from the creek and the other one was maybe 50 foot from the creek or something like that. And we just traveled along and we did find a vernal pool. It looked like it was being fed by an intermittent creek. We didn't go back later in the summer, so I don't know if it dried up or it depends upon, as they were saying, the weather and the precipitation. This year, the spring was drier at the very beginning of springtime. And one of the pools that, the vernal pools that I watch along 114 near Price's Fork Road, that didn't get any water until about probably early March. And by mid-April, it was dry already. Normally, it doesn't dry up until early to mid-May. So this year, the critters had a little bit shorter period of time in that. Although right now we've been getting more rain lately, so somehow if the vernal pools got small enough and the critters were able to stay alive in that, then hopefully with this rain in that, they'll have a longer period of time to come out in that. There's another vernal pool that I've been monitoring along the Huckleberry in the Merrimack area. I started monitoring that about, maybe 7-8 years ago. But I noticed 3-4 years ago, it no longer was holding water. And I don't know what happened to it. There was no obvious changes in the topography or anything, but for some reason, it doesn't hold water anymore. So that was the first pool that I found salamander eggs in. So that was kind of a thrill for me. Further down that trail, there where the hotel was in Merrimack, there used to be a pool there that mostly kept water because there was some, it was either green frog or bullfrog tadpoles in there. They take 2 years in that, so that stayed. But unfortunately, they filled that vernal pool in, so that's no longer existing. So as he was saying, vernal pools are important because they slow down the water flow in that, like for floods times and that. Any wetland will do that, but this is a type here. They were showing in Massachusetts, believe they have zoning laws that are based on where the vernal pools on that, and they have regulations about where you can build in that. Virginia has some laws, but I think it has to do with the larger vernal pools, like larger than 1/10 of an acre or something like that. So that doesn't help all of the smaller ones in that. And I'm not quite certain how much the state is. They are looking into the vernal pools and that, and they're getting the Master Naturalists to help in that. And Mike has brought some of the pamphlets here. One's on frogs, one's on snakes, and one's on, what was the other one? Turtles. So anybody here is welcome to take those. They got, do all of them have CD-ROMs in the back?
They do.
Okay, they've got CD-ROMs. And then you could listen to them in that too. The obligates around here in the New River Valley are the wood frog. And as he was saying, they have a type of chemical in their bloodstream similar to antifreeze. So they can freeze solid, but then they come back to life afterwards. So that's one of our obligates around here. The fairy shrimp is another obligate around here, but unfortunately Judy has only found it there once at Crater Lake. The other three are salamanders, the Jefferson salamander, the spotted salamander, and the marbled salamanders. If you find those, then it's likely a vernal pool. Right now, she said that 3 out of the 4 vernal pools at Crater Lake have dried up already. The entrance pool has a tendency to get out to like about an acre size, like she said. It sometimes lasts 3 or 4 or 5 years, but smaller. It might get like only 20 or 30 foot wide. So it's more of a long-term vernal pool in that. Other
One to the left if you're going.
Yes, yeah, the entrance pool is the one on the left that you could see when you're entering the Crater Lake State Park. Other predators of the animals in the vernal pools include skunks, raccoons, possums, snakes, as they were saying, squirrels, okay, chipmunks, and owls. They've got a game camera picture of a barred owl walking through the pool catching salamanders. And then you can have like the great herons will catch the frogs in that too. So they might not have the fish, but they've got other predators, and that's part of the ecosystem in that. So also, as Judy was saying, the red Fs, which is a salamander, they are voracious eaters of other salamanders and eggs and everything. So one of the vernal pools down to Withville in that Beagle Ridge Herb Park, they monitor the pools there, and they've got like measuring sticks that I think they're like 4 foot tall or something. So they go up and down, they dry up, and then you get cardinal flowers and other types of land type flowers after they dry out and that. So they've been monitoring those, but unfortunately their red Fs are getting invasive there. So getting very aggressive, and they're kind of cleaning out all the wood frog eggs and that, unfortunately. Okay, the data that they collect is going to be used by the various different state agencies, game and wildlife, DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Park Service. They can identify significant pools. They can pinpoint where they are, so they'll decide whether they need regulations or whatever eventually. Universities do research in that, particularly tech in that. I think that's about all that I have. Does anybody have any questions?
So we have karst terrain around in this area. Does that affect the vernal pool?
Yes, question was, we have a lot of karst terrain around here, like subterranean caves and passageways and that. And that will affect The limestone, if it hasn't gotten too many tunnels in that, it acts as a barrier before it reaches the groundwater below it. So therefore, the water takes longer to drain down. So yes, but once it starts finding the tunnels in that, then yeah, they'll disappear in that.
I was wondering about the trees because it has to be a special species of trees around there that are going to be okay with having their roots flooded for months or weeks on end. So what kind of trees are you likely to find in those areas where there are vernal pools?
Okay, question was what type of trees have learned to live in conjunction with the vernal pools where it's there's more water, less oxygen. I can't remember which ones exactly, but some of the maple trees, not the silver, but the red and some of the others. Some of the oaks, I believe, have sycamore trees are in the floodplains and that, so they're more tolerant of the water areas and that. But there are specific plants and trees and grasses and things like that. You know, cattails and things like that.
Yeah, in the video they mentioned yellow birch.
Oh, yellow birch, someone, they mentioned. So yes, there is particular ones that have learned to co-evolve and
Michigan.
that was Michigan, but
I was just gonna comment that we visited one a few weeks ago. There was like swamp oak surrounding it, and you can see where the water line comes to. Like it's like staining on the trees almost.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
She was talking about swamp oaks and she could see where the water level has gone up and down on them. So that's one way to tell. And someone was mentioning earlier that after the vernal pools have dried up, you can possibly tell where they were because you can see all of the mud, the dried mud on top of the leaves and everything. So that's an indication that there was water there and it might have been a vernal pool earlier in the year. And I've seen other areas where the tadpoles don't have time to mature and you see like raccoon prints and everything. So they've had a nice meal. So as he was saying, the cycling of the nutrients back and forth between the pool and the forest is another important aspect of these unique ecosystems. Let me see if there is anything in the chat. Nope, nothing in the chat. Does anybody?
One of the interesting vernal pools that I saw last fall was one that's formed. There is sediments in a sinkhole. And when the water table comes up, it fills up, so it's filling from the bottom up. And then you have this vernal pool, and that's where the Virginia sneezeweed is found. It's only found in these vernal pools.
Oh.
Very rare plant here in Virginia.
Okay, Bob was saying that there are some sinkholes that he's seen where the water table, when it rises in the wintertime and when you've had all of the rainfall and that, the water table lifts up and then it becomes a vernal pool from below instead of going from top down. And he says sneezeweed, which is it
Virginia sneezeweed.
Virginia sneezeweed, was it endangered or threatened?
It is extremely rare. It's only found at these vernal pools near Harrisonburg. Harrisburg, I mean, yeah.
Okay, so he says that they're extremely rare, this Virginia sneezeweed, and that they only live in the vernal pools.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's so.
Yeah, and that's the plan I mentioned at one point, that it grows like underwater when the water's gone.
Yes.
And working with the game department, one of the arguments people said is tell me, it's like vernal pools, that we're gonna get mosquitoes.
Oh.
You're gonna get tracked by mosquitoes. And I try to tell them that really a mosquito in a vernal pool it's a mosquito nightmare. Because there are so many predators, salamanders and aquatic insects that feed on mosquito larvae. So it's not really a source of mosquito. You're gonna get those, or old tires that have gutters that have not been cleaned out, things like this, puddle of water Cause they have no predators there, mosquito or that no predators there, but when they're in a vernal pool, it's full of predators. It's really being worse.
Okay, Mike Pinder, who works with Fish and Wildlife here in Virginia, he says that there's a misconception about the vernal pools being overrun by the mosquito wiggler larvae. They have plenty of predators which eat them, salamander larvae and other insects. So therefore, they get cleaned out eventually from the vernal pool. So it's really in your home settings and tires or clay pots that get water in them, and they stand there for days on end, and there's nothing there to eat the mosquito larvae. So out in the forest, they were eating that.
So,
And-
I have a question.
Yes.
So the vernal pools, do they have a unique soil underneath them that retains the water? Is it compacted soil, or what causes them to make vernal pools?
Yes, there are specific types of soils. I don't remember what they are, but yes, it does let less of the water through them. It also depends upon the water table level too. If the water table level starts getting too low, then all of the water is going to go down no matter what. So it's both factors, both the type of the soil and the water table level. So both factors. And as he was saying, climate change can affect it too with the weather and everything. So if you're going to have more dry areas than that, there's going to be less amphibians, then there's going to be less food for the great blue herons and the regular herons and the raccoons and everything. So it's climate change is going to change stuff for them and us. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. And what I'll do is I've got a handout that I've made to some of the resources, both books. There are books that tell you how to make a vernal pool if you want to put one on your property. There's also other videos that you can watch if you're interested in vernal pools. I'll put the handouts in our chapter website underneath resources, and then you're welcome to browse that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, I wanted to remind everyone that this Saturday is the plant sale. It will be held at 300 Pepper Street in Christiansburg, which is at the Museum of the Gardens there. The reminder is to park along the street and not on the behind the property. This is from 10 to 2 this coming Saturday. And don't forget that Friday is Love a Tree Day. So
Love a tree.
Love a Tree Day, National Love a Tree Day.
We can't love them any other day, just has to be on that Friday.
Well, you can go out of your way, Beth, to love a tree a little bit more. So, yeah, and if you go to our website, you can go and find out what plants are available for sale this Saturday at the plant sale. So I know I bought 4 and I'm going to find somebody who's going to pick them up for me because I have to be out of town this weekend. Oh, yeah, and there's also a raffle if you look that up, and you can get in on the raffle, which is a pretty good idea too to support the club. I mean, the society. All right. Yeah, and it's to support the grant program that we have. We do make grants available through, and that's also mentioned on our website. And people do and have applied for a number of grants that we have made available for people. Any other items to be brought up this evening? All right. Well, thank you for all attending, and that was a great presentation this evening. Thank you very much.
How many on Zoom?
There was 12 to begin with.
Yeah.
Hi, Pat.